So you guys know when you hold something like in high regard as a kid and you think it's like great and it's amazing and you're like, there's never anything going to be better than this.
Yes, yes.
So this album that we're getting ready to review is one of those moments for me. So on this episode of Blenderstyle, I want to talk about Sepultura Schizophrenia. It was released in 1987 on, I don't even know how to pronounce that record label. Cheers.
Cheers, gentlemen.
Cheers.
So I was wondering why you picked this one of all the Max era Sepultura albums. You went with Schizophrenia.
Yes. So I think I got into this around 95.
Okay, early.
Maybe 96. We were listening to a lot of Offspring, Smash, and Green Day, Dookie.
Yep, totally.
And then I kind of went to LA for something and went to Tower Records and got Offspring Ignition and found this in the punk section nonetheless.
Really?
Yeah. And I was like, oh.
And you thought you liked punk
yeah.
at the time?
Well, I did like punk at the time. But I was more into like hair metal and thrash metal kind of things. And so this was kind of like a weird mix to me when I put it in. I was like, I wasn't expecting it. And it was just amazing to me. Like
this is pretty thrashy, though.
Yeah, the mix of thrash with punk and all that stuff to me at the time was just crazy. I mean,
and the artwork on Sepultura albums are cool.
Yeah, the artwork on this isn't that cool, but it's still pretty decent.
It was cool then, yeah.
Yeah, it was like that pastel, like almost like in the style like the Wolf's Howling at the Moon kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. It's cooler than the artwork for Offspring Ignition.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So just want to see what you guys thought about it. Because I know you listen to Sepultura. I think after this album, it was Roots that you got me into. Because I hadn't heard any new Sepultura.
Right.
Roots is a few albums after this.
Yeah, Roots was like
96 or 7.
97, yeah.
Yeah.
I really got into Arise.
Okay.
That was the one and that got me
and maybe that's where I heard Sepultura before
Yeah, I just fucking love that album. I mentioned it on our Peter Gabriel episode.
Mm-hmm.
And after Arise, I just started buying, I fell in love with Sepultura. I got Chaos AD.
Mm-hmm.
I think I skipped this one.
I think Chaos AD was the first one I had listened to.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
And then I think I skipped this one, and but I got Morbid Visions.
Okay.
Which is like the re-release of the demo stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And I thought it sounded like garbage at the time because it's really rough.
It is really rough.
And then I think I skipped Beneath the Remains too.
What was the one before this one? Because this was their second
Morbid
album.
Visions.
Was it Morbid? Okay, so when I was at the record store, I got Morbid Visions as well. And yeah, I couldn't get into that one. It was, for the time, this was like more up my alley.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, this is a way different sound than Morbid Visions.
This one's more thrashy. Morbid Visions is more like blackened.
Yes, exactly.
Like Venom era black metal.
Yeah.
And this is their first album with Andreas Kisser, too.
Which explains a lot.
Yeah, and in an interview with them on this release of this album, he said that he brought kind of like a more modern rock kind of feel to the band, or knowledge, I guess you could say.
Yeah, like actual playing and stuff. Because these guys were like, I think Max was like 18 when they recorded this.
So, yeah, they were young.
And Igor was 17, his brother.
I find it funny because, like, I've never followed Sepultura after Max left the band. I've never cared for him since then.
So we have to talk about this because I'm in the same boat, dude.
But when I looked up this, I mean, Max and Igor were the founders of Sepultura.
Yeah, they were kids, dude.
And for them to just kind of walk away from it, I always thought that was weird. But like in the history of things nowadays, they've been out of Sepultura longer than they ever were in Sepultura.
Yeah.
I think they were only the band for
and have made better music than Sepultura.
Exactly.
With Cavalera, Conspiracy, and Nail Bomb, and
and Soulfly.
Soulfly, yeah.
And he just recently came out with that newer band with his son. I forget the name of it. Something.
I think I heard about it.
Something to do with death or something. I don't know.
So Nathan, did you like post Max? Derek Green's the new singer.
No, man. You guys are Roots fans, and I'm not. Like, I'm not a Roots fans. So for me, Morbid Visions is better than this album.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
I kind of agree,
like,
maybe.
Beneath the Remains is better.
Yeah, I like
And
the New Theory
then-
Remains.
But they peaked at Arise for me, Sepultura.
Is Arise your favorite?
I guess it's my favorite. I'm just not a big Sepultura fan. Never have been.
I fucking loved this band back in the day.
And I think I'm kind of more along your lines. Like, I was into Sepultura when we listened to it, but I never got into Roots as much as like you. Like, I know you liked Roots when we were listening to it back in the day.
Well, it came out new,
Yeah,
and I bought it I think the day it came
I
out.
think so,
The
because I remember
CD.
listening to it a lot. But I always remember being like super intrigued by the drumming on it,
Yes,
With
and
the-
the tribal
the
shit.
tribal stuff. But as far as like the music goes, I wasn't super interested. I think it was the older stuff for me that kind of got me with Sepultura. I think it was
I
better.
really liked Roots.
It
The
was
artwork
decent.
kind of like brought it in for me. The artwork's dope on that.
I think when Blood Rooted came out, it really made me hate Roots even more, though.
I thought you liked Blood Rooted.
I did, and that's what made me hate.
That's like the compilation that came out after Roots that had like 17 songs on it or some shit.
Yeah, I think it was the Ozfest 96 tape that you had.
Mhm.
95 tape, 96,
97,
97.
whatever.
Uh,
Where they played,
where they played
Attitude from Roots.
and that's what kind of like Sepultura was with Max and Igor were way better live than they ever were on album, and I just don't think that was captured in it. So to me, Roots was never like a super great album to me.
Well, and it was like new metal.
It was.
That's one of the things I liked about, like, kind of looking back. I went back to all the Max era Sepultura stuff. And one of the things I like about it is every album is very different.
yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
it gets kind of thrashy in the middle, but like the production changes a lot. Arise is really clean, like
Yeah.
well produced. I think that's when they came to the States and started recording with a budget.
Yeah,
And then Chaos AD had like industrial influence.
it did.
And then Roots was like fucking new metal
Yeah.
almost.
Yeah,
Like
it was kind of the forefront of new
tuned
metal.
to B
Yeah.
or whatever, drop D, whatever. I don't know. But
They were just a band that, like, you know, they were good to skate to. They were fast and riffy
Yeah.
and stuff. But like going back to it, you know, it's just very dated. Some of the riffs are like regurgitated through the album, even.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
I feel that too.
But there's moments on here where this is some evil headbanging
Oh,
stuff.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
I think the thing that gets me is like the lyrics aren't like super great. This is kind of
No,
like
dude.
this is kind of like write a verse and repeat it 3 or 4 times throughout the song.
Totally.
And I'm with you, and I think that makes it kind of feel like there's kind of like this drag on each song, but at the same time, like it's a long album. It's like 38 minutes for only 9 tracks, which is kind of long for only having 9 tracks, but it plays really fast.
Yeah, they're like longer songs, I guess, right?
Yeah, and it plays fast. It has, like you said, it has like some really cool stuff, and when it does get dark, it gets dark,
Mm-hmm.
which is cool, but it still keeps that kind of upbeat punk tempo thing going on throughout the whole thing. Like
Yeah,
even when it gets to the darker parts.
The solos are really great.
hmm
The drumming, I mean, the drumming is really awesome. I even at times hear like Lars Ulrich in it
See,
with like weird little like, you
I
know
think
what
the
I mean?
drum
Sometimes
sounds weird though, like the toms.
yeah. So
Uh-huh.
that was one of my notes on that I put in. It was like it sounds like Lars, and I didn't
It's
mean
funny.
it like it sounds like Lars like ability. It sounds like Lars because there's lots of timing drag and droop. Like
I
it
like-
speeds up and slows
there's
down.
some things that Lars does that like only Lars would think of because I'll hear it and I'm
play.
like, why did he play it like that? But if it was played any different,
It wouldn't be Lars.
it wouldn't. Well, it just wouldn't be the same song.
Yeah.
So-
I want to go back though real quick. Do you guys never got into the Derek Green era of
No,
Sepultura?
no.
The first album was Against. Our friend Travis got into it,
Yeah.
and I just for some reason I felt betrayed.
I think that was it. I think it was
I don't know.
all the drama. I mean, because the internet was kind of new. I mean, I think we had dial up back then.
Totally, yeah.
And so it wasn't like we could go out and look and see what was going on. So all of the stuff we read was like from Metal Edge and you know, Hit Parader and all the different metal
Hit
magazines, Hit
Magazine.
Magazine and stuff. And there was a lot of he said, she said kind of things going on. And to me, I think we were big Max Cavalera fans. More
Totally.
so than we were Sepultura fans. I think we used to joke when we were kids, like if there was somebody who would come up to you and tell you to fuck off, the only person that we'd be afraid of telling us that was Max Cavalera because of the way he says it. We'd be
Yeah.
scared for our lives.
Yeah.
And so I think we were always like more Max fans than we were Sepultura fans. And for
Yeah.
us, it was like along that same line is like when your front man leaves the band, you cease to be a band. I mean, since then, I mean, it's changed now. Like you can get bands with front men that leave all the time.
Around the same time, Cannibal Corpse switched singers. They went from Chris Barnes to George Corpse Grinder. And I was all for it, dude. I like both versions of Cannibal Corpse.
For sure.
This is also a different guitar player.
Yeah.
A different drummer.
And I think it was the soul. I mean, Max and Igor were the souls of
Well,
this
and Against sucks.
I never listened to it.
Well, I listened to Against when it came out, and I haven't gone back.
You were against it?
Yeah, I was against it.
I mean, Soulfly, dude.
Soulfly, I like Soulfly better now than back then. And
I think their first album was great. I kind of fell off the bandwagon after like 3, I think.
Did you like their latest one, Totem?
I listened to parts of it. I haven't listened to the whole thing, but I was kind of happy to see them kind of return to their metal-y sound.
Return to the roots.
Yeah. They've done that for the last couple records. So.
Okay.
But yeah, I would just agree with you. I'm just more of a Max fan than I am a Sepultura fan. I've always gotten shit for this, you know, because like everyone's always like Sepultura.
Yeah.
So, you know, I get it. I totally understand it. But like the cheesy horror intro, the two instrumentals are not even that good. Like,
well, you can tell these guys are young and they're trying to.
And that's what's great about it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you can tell that this is just like full testosterone, ballsy, like.
They're just like writing like I want death stuff and then translating it from Portuguese
they're not even
to English.
Writing words. They're just drawing pictures in their notebook and translating it like hieroglyphs.
Well, I remember Max saying, like I read a article or something like that. Max was saying he would write like Sepultura like on his desk at school when he would go or whatever, or in his books and stuff like that. It just there's like this youth to this that's you can't capture when you get older. It's impossible.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's that hunger in this. Another thing that I thought was kind of, I don't know if it's necessarily a dislike or a like of mine, but there's a lot of reverb in this and flanger chorus on the voice, because Max still hasn't. You could tell he hasn't found his voice in this.
Right.
And he's trying. And at points it makes it almost comical some of the stuff.
Like, but some of the stuff that he's doing is the first time he's trying it.
And that's
with like Morbid Visions. A lot more high pitched. A lot more.
Well, no, and that's what I'm saying. It's not. I don't know if it's necessarily a bad or a good thing. It's just funny to hear.
Yeah.
To hear him experiment like he is, and not necessarily just to experiment, but to experiment and put all this extra stuff to make it work.
That's why I think Beneath the Remains is better, because I feel like this is them. Like it's like definitely a stepping stool for him. You know what I mean?
I think Beneath the Remains is way more polished than this for sure, and it's more of a cohesive album. This is a great album. It kind of lacks that cohesiveness, and it's kind of a little all over the place with like tempo shifts and things like that. There's some drag and droop, like I said, with the drumming and even the guitar parts.
It's kind of charming though in that way.
It is, and it's raw. I do have to give them credit, because for a 1987 album, for what they're doing, it's actually fairly clear.
Yeah, and they like the budget on this was like nothing.
Yeah, I mean, you guys had a crap budget and recorded it. And you probably spent 3 times what these guys
And we tried to make it sound like Roots. The guitar, they're playing some shreddy guitar, like heavy riff. Like I think the guitar playing is pure killer.
I feel like
the lead guitars are definitely killer.
I feel like because Andreas came into this and wanted to prove himself, that he kind of throws it all out there on the table and puts like a masterful performance. Especially considering that a lot of the guitar parts shouldn't work in this with the style that it is, but he bends it in there and makes it work, and it actually sounds really good.
And the guitar riffing is kind of, I think you were saying it was kind of samey.
The rhythm part. Guitar, but like when they have,
but it's like that Sepultura rhythm exists, and it just, I love that.
It's almost like you can hear Brazil within it, though, right?
Yeah, dude. There's something about
that's what's cool about them.
And it continues to. Max still plays like that.
But does Max still only play with 3 strings in this album?
I don't know.
Because I always thought that was like one of the weirdest things whenever we would see videos of them live, and he would be up there with just 3 strings on his guitar.
Is that true?
I've seen numerous videos where he's...
I don't know about that, but I have seen a review. I saw interview with him where he like talked about like how he'll try to like make a whole bunch of different riffs with like the easiest, most simplest fucking chord progression. You know what I mean? And like, there's something about that I think is so primal and awesome. You know
primitive.
Exactly.
Yeah. So did you pick this because it's like your first Sepultura that you got into?
I think
Is this your favorite?
The sentimental value at the time when in '95 when this was out, I think. What else was out for Sepultura?
So this has
'Cause
already
I
been
remember-
out almost 10 years, right?
This was
Arise was out. I think Arise came out like 94.
was that what you listened to all the time when we were kids?
Fuck yeah,
Okay,
constantly.
So I knew Arise. And I think at the time I liked this better than Arise because I was more into, like, back then I was more into like hair metal and thrash metal and anything with like flashy guitars and stuff. And a lot of the stuff like you were listening to, like you listened to like kind of that really grindy like black metal stuff, and I just wasn't into it. And I never understood it like when we were kids. I think that was the kind of dividing factor that like we stopped hanging out because Matt started listening to one thing and I started listening to another thing, and we couldn't agree
Oh
on
my
music.
gosh. That's awesome.
But
It's kind of true.
it is kind of true.
You're into like Monster Magnet. I'm like, the hell is this crap?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then like 10 years later, I'm like, I was totally wrong.
And I'm doing the same thing for the stuff you were listening to back then. But it's like
That's awesome.
it's one of
dudes.
those weird things where back then this was the pinnacle of Sepultura to me. And so I picked this going into it, you know, with these fond memories. And this thing was elevated on this high pedestal for me. And I was kind of disappointed with it. It's like one of those, it's like Pantera. Like I go back and listen to Pantera, and back in the day, I thought it was the heaviest thing. Nothing's ever going to get heavier than this. And I listen to it now and I find myself going, all right, dude, come on, let's go. Let's pick up the
Fucking
pace.
blasphemy, bro.
Yeah, I don't know.
not like, not it's bad, but
Cowboys
it's
from
just,
Hell.
but it's just not as fast as I remember it. Just like this. This isn't as fast. I remember this being so fast and so like
Vulgar holds up.
Dude,
And so does Far Beyond.
Far
Pantera
Beyond for
fucking
me.
holds up, dude.
But I thought you were a Cowboys fan.
I am a huge Cowboys fan,
So,
but
yeah, that's the one I don't like
but I
Cowboys that
can't.
much.
But I don't hold it in as high regard as I used to. I think that's what I'm getting at.
Oh, of course, dude. Vulgar was the most brutal, like tough, heaviest thing I've ever heard in my life at the time.
That's what I'm saying. And so I hold it in that it's the heaviest thing ever. And then I listen to it now and I'm like disappointed. Not
Yeah.
because
I
of
think this is
not
what
because
this
of it.
record is for me too.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, I'm not I'm kind of let down that I went back to this record and other Sepultura records and was like
disappointed
not
by him. Yeah, that's exactly where
Yeah,
I'm at.
why'd you
with it.
fucking pick this? You ruined Sepultura for us.
Yeah, I know. Well, we could be just those guys that were like, "Oh yeah, great records," and now we're those guys that are like, "Well, I don't know. We haven't said."
No, but that's exactly how I feel about it. Like you said, Pantera was like heavy, and then you go back and you're not disappointed because it's still Pantera. It's still amazing, but it's not what you remember.
I still think Vulgar's like a perfect album.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think
it's still a
Pantera's
great
just a
album.
bad.
Yeah, don't use Pantera.
Don't use Pantera
All
for
right.
this one.
Poison.
Okay, that's fair.
But yeah, so I mean, what would you guys rate this?
I give this a 3.5 out of 5. It's good. It's Sepultura. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. The production kind of sucks. The songs aren't that memorable. Like, there's parts in it that kind of jump out and then that get stuck in my head. But it all kind of just jams by. But it's a fun listen. Like, this is easy to listen to.
Yeah.
And so 3.5 for me. What about you, Nate?
3.5.
Oh.
Yeah. There's good songs on here. Great solos. Great evil sounding stuff. But I like some other stuff by them. But yeah, 3.5.
Nice.
Casey, your pick?
So I actually went back and forth on this. I wrote 3.5. I wrote 3.2. I wrote 3.1. I wrote 4.1. I ended up at 3.8.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
I'm with you guys. There's some great catchy stuff in here. It doesn't hold up to my memory of it. My fondness of this, I kind of feel like, yeah, I might have ruined this album for myself. Because had you asked me to just review this out of memory without listening to it, I probably would have given it like a 4.8.
Right, yeah. Nostalgia.
Yeah, and then going back to it, I was like, man, what was I smoking back then?
Yeah.
It's still a great album.
It's not a shit album
No,
at
it's
all.
not.
It's
you
good.
should if you haven't listened to it, you should listen to it.
Yeah, I think if you're a fan of Sepultura,
38 minutes, piece of cake.
if you're a fan of just thrash, like early thrash metal,
That's
or
what I
early
love about
punk.
early death metal,
Yeah.
though. It's real thrashy, but like, you know, this doesn't hold up to the likes of like Death, Morbid Angel,
Oh no.
Deicide. Like,
I think if you put it against any other band that came out in '87, it would hold its own.
I agree.
But I think, you know, as times have changed, it's just the progression of music since then. It's still good. It's just not what I remember.
I mean, there are definitely albums that are old that are like damn near perfect, but some just don't stand the test of
Mhm.
time.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I think maybe it's also because of their catalog after this got so much better
Yeah.
that it just made this so much weaker.
A Rise is like over a 4 for me, easy.
Oh yeah, yeah. So
Good pick, Casey.
thanks
Yeah.
guys. So this is Blenderstyle. That was Sepultura, Schizophrenia.
Blenderstyle coming at ya hot.